Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll let some folks trickle in before we get started. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Really excited to be talking about the subject matter with you. So really excited for our webinar to begin.
Yes. Likewise, Leah. Let's wait for some critical mass, then we'll get into it. This was actually one of my favorite sessions at TrustCon, and it was so popular that it had a second session added on shortly after. So you all are in for a treat. Yeah, thank you so much. Greetings, Renato. Why don't you all share where you're tuning in from? Leah and I are tuning in from New York, and we'd love to know where you're joining us from. Awesome, awesome. Good to see you all.
Iceland.
Very cool, very cool.
Can we join you is the question.
I have joined you, and it was fun.
Zimbabwe. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, such a pleasure. Thank you all for tuning in. Awesome. So as folks are trickling in, Leah, I'll give a quick introduction. I'll pass it over to you to introduce yourself and tell us more about today's discussion. So hello, everyone. My name is Sandra Khalil. I'm the Associate Director of All Tech is Human. Welcome to another edition of our webinar series, where we dig into thorny tech and society issues in meaningful conversations, shaping our responsible tech future. If you're new here, welcome. All Tech is Human is a nonprofit organization committed to building the relational infrastructure that is sustaining the responsible tech ecosystem. We connect diverse voices, we try to surface interdisciplinary insights, and we try to help people break into and grow within the responsible tech space. So whether you're coming from a tech background, policy, academia, advocacy work, creative fields, there's absolutely a seat at the table for you. Our live streams and webinars happen bi-weekly, and they're just one way that you can get involved and spark these important conversations and build community with the responsible tech community. If you're looking to get more involved, here are a few ways. You can join our very vibrant Slack community. We host a free open workspace with over 13,000 people around the world, and it's growing quite rapidly. I think we have over 100 countries. Really, it's filled with people working across disciplines and sectors in responsible tech who care about the work that you're doing and are finding ways to collaborate, meet up, sharing opportunities, giving leads on jobs. It's really a great space for that kind of info sharing and knowledge sharing. Another way is to attend one of our upcoming gatherings. So we have curated US-based convenings, we have virtual discussions like these, and we're always trying to design more opportunities for real-time connection and collaboration between you all. So we welcome your thoughts and ideas there. The third way is to bring the conversation local. So we have All Tech is Human X, ATIH X meetups criteria. And that's basically a way that you can receive guidelines to host an informal meetup in your city or your community where we might not have a solid footprint. So if you're curious about that, visit our website for more information. And today's talk is a really fascinating one. Leah Ferentinos is joining us to discuss issues of trust, safety, and privacy as it relates to agentic AI. Again, this was a very popular conversation at TrustCon in collaboration with some friends at Google. And Leah will be building off of that conversation and sharing some great insights on what agentic AI is and how it can manifest, how we see these tools manifesting themselves in our daily lives. So we'll be diving into that. And Leah, I'd love to pass it over to you for a quick intro.
Sure. Hi, thank you so much for that introduction. So I'm a product policy manager at Credo AI. I previously managed trust and safety, GRC, like governance, risk, and controls initiatives at KPMG. and served as a policy manager at Meta, where I was driving information integrity policy development in political ads policy, and across the information integrity ecosystem. I previously held like research roles at Yale Law School's Information Society Project, the Floyd Abrams Institute for Freedom of Expression, and the Annenberg Public Policy Center at UPenn. So I've been trying to do the trust and safety ecosystem for about 10 years now. I co-founded the Information Professionals Association chapter in New York City. And I'm serving as like a strategic advisor to All Tech is Human here, and serve on the community leadership committee at Integrity Institute. So I'm working hard to kind of like build a responsible tech and like responsible AI ecosystem, so that we can kind of have these conversations, write best practice guidelines, white papers, and kind of submit papers and guidelines on these like really critical, important issues, because they come up very frequently, and the information ecosystem is changing so fast in tech that we really have to like be mindful and on top of how the evolving like regulatory landscape and like technical landscape is affecting us.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing that. I would love to start our conversation by saying, why are we talking about agentic AI now? What makes it sort of the flavor of the week? What are you seeing in recent developments?
Sure. I mean, so agentic AI is one of the hot topics in the AI space right now. Like while products are being launched and new tools are being shared, there's not a whole lot of clarity or industry-wide consensus about how these things are going to interact with one another, like what the larger ecosystem impacts are and how new risks are going to be mitigated. So I think for this discussion more broadly, we want to talk about a couple of things, right? We want to talk about how agentic AI differs from like traditional AI tools and explore what defining characteristics of agentic AI might be, and how they can be used. We also want to talk about identifying top challenges with agentic systems, understanding what approaches might be needed or are already underway in addressing these challenges, and what opportunities exist for cross-industry and like multi-stakeholder cooperation to build expertise and ultimately safer products, as we know that this is kind of the direction that industry is going. And so we want to be able to build safer agentic systems that have these kind of novel challenges addressed before they are rolled out at scale.
Mhm.
So some of the challenges that I think we're going to be talking about in this conversation are data access and privacy, identification and authentication, unauthorized access, and prompt injection. And some of the other things we're going to be talking about is like the information ecosystem, tech governance, regulation. Is the infrastructure and tools that we currently have, is it up to the task, or what do we need to do to build a safe ecosystem here?
Mhm. That makes a lot of sense. So let's get into it. Let's start with the basics. What are AI agents? And apologies for anyone who's a few steps ahead, but we're just setting a foundation.
Yeah, I think it's important to distinguish, because I think general bots have kind of been in our information ecosystem online for a while now. So we're going to be talking about kind of the differences between AI agents and more traditional bots, as well as kind of where agentic systems are going. In 2024, I'm going to use this definition. The CEO of Google described agents as intelligent systems that show reasoning, planning, and memory. They're able to think multiple steps ahead and work across software and systems, all to get something done on your behalf, and most importantly, under your supervision.
Mhm.
So in general, we're thinking about kind of the following distinctions, right? An AI assistant is an AI tool that uses AI to understand and help users complete tasks. An AI agent is an evolutionary step like beyond assistance, right? They use advanced reasoning, thinking at the model level, and with your guidance and oversight, taking actions on your behalf through either computer use capabilities or information agent capabilities, meaning they can use reasoning to autonomously conduct extensive multi-step research, gather information, and then synthesize it. So in general, agents tend to use more complex reasoning capabilities autonomously than other AI tools, and are able to work with more complex goals and tasks. And I
Mhm.
think so. One of the things that we're going to be talking about is how much permission you give an agent along the way, and what are the ways to build with that in mind. Because agents can operate, fully autonomously, or you can build in those steps along the way where the user has time to answer questions before the agent actually makes a task.
And so digging deeper into the use cases, how are companies using agents today?
Yeah, we're already seeing companies deploy agentic systems at scale, particularly in like customer service and operational contexts. So this is something that's currently happening today, whether or not users understand how they have access to kind of like individual like user-focused agents, but companies are already using agents in their systems right now. For instance, in customer service, agents are being used to handle like complex queries that go beyond kind of simple scripted chatbots. For example, instead of just providing like an FAQ answer, an agent can actually pull a customer's order history, cross-reference like shipping data, issue a refund, update the account records, like all on its own, without that human in the loop. The kind of end-to-end resolution, this kind of wasn't possible with earlier types of bots. On the operations side, companies are experimenting with agents to like automate back office tasks from like IT troubleshooting to helping with procurement, identifying vendors, comparing bids. So like these are things that are already being used to help companies do things at scale faster. They're completing multi-step workflows across like multiple kinds of systems. And adoption is accelerating like tenfold. Because once the infrastructure is in place, this is a cost-saving mechanism for companies to scale these kind of procedures.
Absolutely. You just mentioned bots in your answer, and we have been not interchangeably, but using similar terminology. So just to distinguish, what are the distinguishing characteristics of an AI agent as compared to standard bots that have been in the internet ecosystem for years already?
Okay, yeah, I think that that's important to talk about because AI agents, the way that like I would distinguish it is by that level of autonomy, the ability to plan and reason across multiple steps,
Mm.
and the ability to act across systems on behalf of users. So bots generally are rule-based or scripted programs. They follow like preset instructions or narrow algorithms to complete tasks. Like think about like a chatbot on a website that to answer an FAQ. I'm sure everyone's had their own frustrations with that process. It's a very simple decision tree that executes orders when certain conditions are met. They don't have that reasoning or adaptability beyond the script they were initially given. So agents like to contrast with that, they have that reasoning, planning, and memory that I was talking about in some of the quotes that I brought up earlier. So they're not just running that simple script. They can make decisions across those multiple steps. They weigh different options, and the way that they act is a bit more adaptive, I would say, than bots. We've all had that experience where we're dealing with a bot and we say, "Speak to agent, speak to agent." So, for example, like a bot might not check calendar availability, but an agent would check the calendar, cross-reference emails for travel preferences, book a flight, notify a team, like all of this. It could be with or without your oversight. So that's kind of why we're advocating for that human in the loop throughout the process.
Sure. What's the positive vision here? Like, what kind of things could agents realistically do for people in their daily lives? You kind of touched on it, but can you unpack that a little bit more?
Sure. I think one of the ways that people are advocating right now for like the user facing agents, for instance, folks at Google DeepMind are talking about like the universal AI assistant, like an AI agent that can pick up like the mental load of like our everyday tasks, like get back time in your life. By basically like personalizing experiences, analyzing data, communicating with users to understand like what their goals and preferences are and then like tailor it in real time. So the example that I gave at TrustCon, a particularly frustrating experience I think for all of us right now is like obtaining like concert tickets. As you know, you're oftentimes fighting with other agents on the other end. So like today, what you'd have to do for a concert ticket is like wait for the release date, perfectly time your purchase details to populate as quickly as possible. Navigate multiple browser windows across multiple sites and kind of just hope you get lucky, I guess. An agent could do all this for you. It could like monitor the pre-sale schedule, queue up the exact second tickets are released, compare seats, like data on location, and then check with you for a final confirmation, we hope, before purchasing. And so like this could handle the logistical burden so that users could focus on the experience itself and not just like how frustrating some of these systems are for us on a daily basis. So like
Mhm.
that's a more of like an insight into like what the positive vision on agentic systems are. Like that's what an AI agent would be like while operating properly, I guess, without any of the challenges or potential mishaps that could happen along the way.
Okay, so that all makes sense. Now we understand the vision for AI agents. It'll get me the cheapest Beyonce ticket I can find. But what challenges do you foresee in these systems raising in the future?
Yeah, so I think when we're talking about like concerns around agentic AI, I think there's a couple things that often come up, right? There's like autonomy, personhood, liability, because these are AI systems performing tasks autonomously, right? So in addition, from distinct concerns around other kind of Gen AI, this adds that like privacy and security concerns um, that you did not enact yourself necessarily, right? So I'm going to be going over just like a couple of these potential challenges. And then kind of later on, I think we'll talk about like potential solutions that are already in place and things that we want to put forward, right? So the first one I wanted to talk about is potential misuse for illicit activities like CSAM, fraud, CSAM for those not in trust and safety is child sexual abuse material. So like one of the most serious risks I think with agentic systems is the potential for like illicit activities because agents can act autonomously and also at scale. This could be exploited to generate, harmful content, to distribute, or also to conceal harmful material like CSAM. They could also be directed toward fraud, for example, like carrying out phishing campaigns automatically, setting up fake accounts, even executing financial scams without much human input if we don't put those guardrails in place. The automation lowers the barrier for bad actors to kind of enter this space and makes misuse harder to detect. So another one that I was concerned of is like unequal distribution of impact. For instance, there's a risk, like many technologies, the benefits of agentic AI may accrue to like companies or global regions with access to the most advanced tools, while harms may disproportionately fall on like marginalized groups. For example, agents that automate hiring or loan applications could deepen existing inequities if not designed with these things in mind. Like on a global level, we could see certain countries or regions or industries gaining like a huge productivity boost, while others are harmed or even left behind from those benefits. Another one that's fairly unique to agentic systems is like prompt injection. And I'll kind of explain a little bit more about what that is. So that's it's like the loss of control and manipulation of the content that the agent is basing its decisions off of. So this happens when malicious instructions are hidden in the content that an agent processes. Like
Mhm.
an email, a website, or a document, the agent could be manipulated into carrying out actions that the user never authorized, like sending private data to an attacker or making unintended purchases. That loss of control is like particularly concerning because it undermines that user trust. Like if you can't be sure the agent is only acting on your behalf, the entire purpose of this agentic system kind of falls apart, right? Um, Another thing that I think we should be considerate of is the deterioration of the information ecosystem. Like we need to think about that, agents read, write, and interact with online content at scale, which could accelerate problems like misinformation, low quality content flooding the web. So if agents start generating more of what other agents are consuming, we risk having this like feedback loop where the quality of information online deteriorates. So that makes it harder for both humans and agents to distinguish what reliable information actually is, apart from like the noise or manipulation or manipulated content that could like flood the information ecosystem. Another thing that is on my mind is bias in terms of when agents are making decisions. So when they're taking action on users' behalf, like embedded bias in that model could have like real world consequences. An example is like an agent could help with job applications, and they could prioritize certain candidates unfairly. For instance, like an agent managing a healthcare plan might provide less efficient recommendations for certain populations than others. Like the autonomy of agents means that these biases can scale in ways that are much harder to keep track of. And then if it's harder to monitor, it's also harder to correct. And finally, we have like cybersecurity issues, right? So agents challenge the old paradigm that bots are always bad. So now we have agents that look like bots, but are acting legitimately on behalf of users. So this creates like a new it creates new attack services. So how do we authenticate good agents while keeping bad ones out?
Mhm.
Malicious actors could build agents that look legitimate, but then steal data or cause disruption. At the same time, well-intended agents could be hijacked, manipulated, or exploited in ways that cause harm. So the cybersecurity field will need new methods to identify and defend against these kind of risks. So these are all things that we need to kind of keep in mind when we're thinking about like the challenges with agentic systems, is that they present kind of new and intriguing challenges rather than just other kinds of Gen AI systems as well.
I remember just last night you sent me an article about how malicious prompting can uh, um, you know, create nefarious activity and fraud, like create nefarious, you know, yeah, like being be farmed out into nefarious activities, whether it's fraud or CSAM, and cybersecurity issues, and how we sometimes lack the ability to detect these at scale. Um, and
Especially because we're rolling these systems out so quickly. I think where companies are in a little bit of a race to get out agents because other companies are using agents, and that's understandable. But this is like a perfect vector for like cybersecurity issues, fraud, manipulated content. I mean, before agentic systems, prompt injection was, something to be concerned about for general algorithms, but not something, that was acting autonomously on your behalf. And so we have to think about, how much autonomy do we give agents? How many steps along the way are we asking for that human oversight? I mean, there are systems in place where, you could do kind of every step where you ask permission, where, you only like, even to look in your email, you have to give it permission as well. So like the vectors that it searches for, as well as the decisions that it makes. So there's ways to mitigate some of this that exist today. But in general, we also have to think about this as we're building the programs too, and not just kind of like as an afterthought after it already happens.
yeah, where we're trying to chase, you know, an open Pandora's box, essentially, and try to get the
Yeah.
lid back on. I do want to take a pause here to remind folks there's a lot of great back and forth in the chat. Please do drop some questions for Leah in the Q&A section of the webinar, because we will dedicate a few minutes at the end for Leah to answer some of your questions.
Oh, you're totally right. Can we save the comments in these?
Yeah, I think it saves. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I
Yeah,
definitely want to read through these as well.
absolutely. Just to sort of move it forward on like the data security and privacy piece, in light of the challenges that we've identified here, what are some of the things that we need to consider when building safe agents?
Yeah, so I think that some of the things we need to think about is what are the unique attributes of agentic AI that require a different approach, right? Because when we're building safe agents, what we're thinking about is kind of we already know some of the harms that happen with other Gen AI systems, but what is unique to agentic AI that requires us to be mindful as we're building? So, for instance, to be truly useful, an agent does need to understand and respond to the same kind of complex and dynamic situations and scenarios that real people do, right? So the more information you give it, the better its autonomous decision making is going to be. But that's exactly what the flip side and the potential harms could be, right? Because like the agent needs to be proactive, teachable, personal, so that acts kind of naturally on your behalf without delay and makes the most accurate decisions possible. So, for example, you can think of an agent that may need access to your emails to pull information about an event, right? Before it can add something to your calendar. But that, again, is you giving up control over your data, and hoping that the agent will only use that um, for what you intend it to do. But it does operate autonomously and intelligently. So we have to code these systems about personally identifiable information, data retention, data storage, and like making these kind of decisions. We have to like code them with that in mind. For instance, with Project Astra, Google's exploring potential mitigations against users unintentionally sharing sensitive information with that agent. And I think they've already built in like privacy controls that make it easy for users to delete their sessions. Um, another example of like how identification and authentication is being done is the Model Context Protocol, which was introduced by Anthropic as a standard for agents to access services where the data is housed. Another example is the agent-to-agent protocol, which is an open protocol that Google built for agents to interact with each other with authentication. The protocol works across the ecosystem, no matter the underlying framework or vendor. So there's like a lot of research that's being done to understand what like bad behavior looks like and also what good agent behavior looks like as well. And hopefully like as the field evolves, the approaches to like kind of solving some of these underlying issues will be solved as well.
Mhm. And what about the guardrails around better prompt injection, like the guardrails around prompt injection in general?
Um, yeah, so the concerns around prompt injection are legitimate about like the agent being manipulated to take actions not directed by the authorized user. Um, so like in that case, balancing autonomy and oversight is key. So one approach to that is to design agents that like pass back control to humans to confirm that they want to move forward with those actions. That have, basically like actions that could have significant impacts, or actions that are difficult to reverse. For example, a user is being asked um, about like, planning their dream vacation. The agent can like research options autonomously, but then should prompt the user before they actually make bookings or access your bank account. Again, that difference between, you being able to tell it what information it's allowed to have access to, as well as what decisions it's allowed to do. There's also right now, there's like a need to research ways to ensure AI agents act as reliable sources of information. Um, and so I think, preventing users from being exposed to fraud and phishing attempts through things like malicious instructions hidden in emails, documents, websites.
Mhm.
Um, I think that there's probably more than just ensuring agents follow instructions. Like once we get to more advanced AI agents and assistants, there will also be a need to ensure these systems are appropriately calibrated to like the interests and needs and values of like users in a way that enables users to be able to use this at scale. For instance, I think in order for this to like actually benefit individuals, they need to feel like they have, control over the information that it has access to, as well as the decisions that it makes.
Mhm. Mhm. And there are obvious implications now that we've discussed for the internet, society, better governance of tools. What does this all mean for the big picture in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, I think so. Right now, the way it stands, AI agents could change the internet as we know it, right? Because agents interact with data and they interact with humans, but they also interact with each other. So right now, agents are interacting with an internet designed for humans. So the question becomes, as agents become more widespread and interact with third-party content and each other more frequently, what protocols, architectures, and governance models can facilitate more efficient and trustworthy agentic behavior? So, like, will it eventually make sense to have an agent layer that's distinct from the human-facing internet where the agents can just interact with each other and like agent on agent crime like won't impact like the internet that the human is actually able to interpret? So, like, I mean, how do we think that policy concerns for AI agents differ from those from existing AI systems? Like, these are questions that we need to think about.
Mhm.
Um, I have a few written down here. Like, how well do you think current regulations cover AI agents specifically as a unique and distinct part of AI systems? Are there existing AI safety standards that can be useful benchmarks? For instance, like NIST AI RMF or ISO standards. What kind of legal frameworks are needed to deal with impacts and questions of liability of AI agents. Um, this was a big part of like the workshop that I ran at TrustCon. Like, what is the liability of AI agents? Who's responsible, right? Because you are giving it the permission to act autonomously on your behalf. But it's designed by a company, right? And that data is housed somewhere. It's housed in a country that may or may not be the same country that the company is based in. Who should be held liable and responsible when an AI agent makes errors or causes harm? Where is that harm caused? How are we um, able to quantify what that harm is? Are these all unique definitions that we have to kind of like redefine based on this new and evolving technology? So, some of the main themes that I think we just talked about are I think AI agents raise new risks around autonomy, privacy, manipulation, liability, cybersecurity. There's some solutions that already exist, like data privacy controls, authentication protocols, protections against prompt injection. Um, but here's where y'all come in, right? So the opportunity is here for cross-industry and multi-stakeholder cooperation. We need to build an expertise around agentic AI systems. We need to share research.
Mhm.
We need to create safer products that align with societal needs. I think that some of the things that we're talking about right now are questions that are unsolved, but that are in use today.
Mhm.
And that's why this issue like interests me so much, is because we're utilizing these systems. Um, and the potential effects and manipulation and privacy concerns, like, they're happening now, and we're all kind of thinking like, oh, they'll be solved downstream, right? And I think that this is something that we need to think about very seriously, as agentic systems have very, very rapidly become common protocol.
Mhm. Mhm. And when you were saying the agent layer, agent on agent crime, I isn't the human a collateral damage in that agent on agent crime, even if we have our own layer to interact with one another? It definitely makes you think in seriousness about the cascading effects of when agents are not operating the way that we need them to.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I'm working on a research study with Integrity Institute right now about information in like AI training data and what that means for the information ecosystem. What is that base layer of the internet that all of our AI is being trained on? That's leading to decisions by like algorithms. And so these are some things that we think about on a daily basis. And we're currently interacting with. And I think that we, in this discussion, kind of some of the stuff that I prepped was very, how are corporations using agents, and how are what is happening like on the corporate level, because they're rolling them out really quickly. But this is also something that's going to overlap with, local, state, and federal governments, right? This is something that we're already seeing algorithm-based decision making in terms of like school choice, in terms of like prison sentences, in terms of like districting. There's a lot of these type algorithmic based decisions that are already in use today that can impact like somebody's literal freedom. And so I think that when we think about the potential ecosystem overlap of where these agents could be in use, a lot of these things right now are being done by like software decisions that like local, state, and federal governments are like purchasing software, and then it's like contained. But these could soon be agentic decision making, right? So there is a potential daily impact that expands just from like the fun examples of my concert tickets that are impossible to get, and I will rage about constantly.
Someone actually said that's a tough scenario because the system, like you said, is flawed inherently. So for the agent to be introduced and navigate an inherently flawed system, it's a tough case to make for like use of an agent. But yeah, no, I concur. Um, we do have a few minutes for some questions. Would you be game to answer a few of these?
Sure, let's go for it. I'm noticing right now that I'm sorry everyone that we missed a really robust discussion in this chat system. So we definitely thank you all for your participation. And I'm really sorry, I don't think that you guys can see what each other are saying.
Okay.
They can?
Yeah, they can't see Q&A, I believe.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Then I don't apologize. I withdraw.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so where should we start with Q&A?
Go for it.
Okay, cool. So Hector says, how is the law ready to track and assign liabilities in an agentic environment? How can courts deal with a world of agents at scale?
Oh, wow. Okay, so courts, I think there's two parts of that question, and I think those are two totally different parts, right? Because right now we are seeing kind of a global kind of regulatory environment that is starting to think about AI regulations, right? We have the EU AI Act. We have a ton of different laws across US states. We heard about like the Colorado AI Act that potentially might be getting amended or repealed in the next session. There's a AI law in Utah and Texas. The RAISE Act is currently on the governor's desk in New York. I think a lot of states and federal governments globally are thinking about regulating and thinking about like potential governance structures around AI. Um, I'm not sure how much of that legislation is focused on agents specifically, because I think that they're trying to make these regulations more broad, that it can touch current and evolving AI systems, right? So I think that um, we're kind of we're not in an ecosystem right now where the regulations are going to denote really, really specific agentic problems, because a lot of the regulation kind of covers more broadly, like how are AI systems being used, making sure that companies are maintaining like change logs, data retention policies that are thinking through all of these kind of, risk and control based like questions.
Mhm.
So the courts is a totally separate question. Right now there's very, very unique situations with where tech and law overlap, and I think that's a totally separate webinar that I also want to attend. So let's bring on a lawyer, and we need to ask them that question.
Sure, for sure. Um, so Debbie also has a question. My concern with agents is when it's no longer reactive but proactive. And this stems from your point about nefarious prompting. When agents starts to make moves the human didn't explicitly request. Where does the accountability fall? The developer, the deployer, or the user?
That is an amazing question. And I think that question was the crux of why I was so interested in this topic when I proposed it at TrustCon. The proposals were due like, I don't know, 6 months ago at this point. Because the answer is we're not sure yet, right? There are not legal cases that have happened in mass on where that accountability falls. And I think that there will probably be endless disclaimers, right, on the use of these systems on user facing. And so I think in order to answer that question properly, we have to think about the difference between user facing agents and agents that corporations are kind of rolling out internally that you interact with, right? So let's think about you're dealing with an agent in like a customer service question, and an agent kind of makes an autonomous decision that you didn't authorize on your account. I think that's a pretty clear answer, right? Because the corporation, you know, um, employed that agent. But did the corporation develop that agent, right? Because they're using a lot of kind of third party developed agents that some companies that are not tech companies are rolling out. For instance, like big banks are using third party agentic tools. Maybe like governments might be using agentic tools to like process systems. I know someone that's running a startup right now for like local NGO like legal aid clinics to use agents. to interact with potential clients. So we have to think about each part of that. And these are going to be such specific case studies. It's also going to be such a question that's answered by courts. Is the developer responsible because that company that rolled out the third-party agentic system didn't really know how to use it very well? What if those permissions existed by the developer that that company could have rolled out, that they chose not to roll out, right? So like, what if they didn't set the right permissions because they didn't know how to use it properly, and then that had downstream effects on the user? I think the developer might say that that is the deployer's fault for not understanding how to utilize the permissions differently. And then the deployer might say, well, the user might have asked different questions. And that the user might say, why is it my responsibility to be a tech expert if I'm just trying to figure out, where my data is and get a refund? And so I think all of these questions and the interaction between all these points are totally valid. And at some point, we're going to have to get an answer on a lot of these a lot of these interactions. And I don't think we have an answer right now. And if somebody knows, like have somebody has an idea of where the courts might fall, I really think this is going to be a case by case scenario, and it's going to have to happen more often. But the answer is we don't want it to happen more often, right? We want those permissions to be correct, and we want our interactions with agents, which are basically inevitable at this point. We want them to have trust and safety in mind, and these tools to be built that are user friendly, that are able to be rolled out at scale currently, because we're currently utilizing these systems.
I think we'll take one more question, and this one hits home for me. It's something I've been thinking about. Unlike obvious harms that trigger immediate responses, we might slowly cede more and more decisions to agents because it's convenient. Over time, this could atrophy our own judgment, critical thinking, and decision-making skills. We see hints of this already with GPS navigation, reducing our spatial awareness, or recommendation algorithms narrowing our choices. Is this part of the conversation? I truly think it is.
Yeah. Sorry for the obvious sounds of New York City in the background. But yeah, Sandra, what do you think about this? I'm really curious about your take.
Ah, I do think when we start using any AI tools for anything but convenience and start outsourcing our creativity, our critical thinking skills, our discernment, our decision making, if we start outsourcing that too much to AI tools, I do believe we're missing the point. I think that these tools are built to optimize and streamline aspects of our life, but they're not meant to be creative on our behalf. They're not meant to problem solve on our behalf. They're not meant to, you know, make those decisions for us. I think we as humans should still be able to have the discernment to do that. So it is a well taken point and something that I do worry about and try to limit in myself when I'm using AI tools to optimize, my email writing, my note taking, other aspects of my life, my trip itineraries. I think we do have to keep that in mind that we shouldn't outsource the creative parts of being human to a tool, because it totally misses the point.
Think a lot of the tech community is hoping that agentic systems specifically will eliminate the like frustrations in life that we like the decisions that we don't want to make versus the decisions that we do want to make. I think the goal, with this like concert example, if we ever want a concert ticket that's, below $500 again, it can, brush up against those other AI agent systems for us. The question is, though, if we are required to be utilizing more and more advanced technology for like the daily processes of life that used to be able to accomplish without that technology, that's kind of taking a lot of people out of the conversation based on, like income inequality, kind of global disparities that we have. And I think that we're, you know, maybe I can get a concert ticket cheaply. Maybe I can't, honestly, we'll see. But I
You're
think
really pressed about the concerts. You're
it
really
really bothers me. You don't understand, like you used to be able to see shows for, $50 or something like that. And now I'm looking for tickets and it's like at minimum 500 plus dollars for something that vendors are using agents, to their benefit. And so an argument is, well, why can't we use it to our benefit too, right? But I think we're taking a lot of people out of the conversation, who don't have access to these tools and, for their daily needs, wouldn't otherwise like need to develop those kind of skills. And so I think that in the democratization of this kind of technology, is probably inevitable, but in the meantime is still kind of relegated to populations that are dealing with tech on an everyday basis. I think, I now have the privilege to be working in tech, right? So, these kind of conversations come up on a daily basis where we can talk about it every day, and most people don't have that situation where they're learning about agents at work every day. So I think that, in terms of how we're going to be utilizing these systems moving forward, I just hope that these systems don't leave so many people behind.
Mm. It's my hope as well, and I think that's a really nice place to finish off here, and hopefully revamp this conversation, bring it back for another session, like you did previously. So thank you so much, Leah, for your insights today on agentic AI. We had a ton of unanswered questions. I think it's really I'd be serious to bring you back for another such conversation. So thank you again for joining us, and please tune in to our next live stream in 2 weeks' time, and stay on top of what All Tech is Human is doing on our Slack and LinkedIn. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you to you and Alltech is Human for facilitating these conversations. I think we can rely on Alltech is Human for these kind of great discussions, now and in the future. And so thank you to our audience for the crazy participation that I'm seeing here. And I really do hope to see you all again and continue this conversation.
Absolutely. We'll make it happen. One
Awesome.
concert ticket at a time.
Yes, amazing.
Awesome. Take care. Cheers.